Yes.
We are not as resilient as we are consumers. If you look at the letter K,
Right.
the baseline is the economy. Some people are winning and some people are losing. And it's the same letter. It's the same economic situation. And some people are doing really good with it. And some people that started off, because K has that point to it where the letters, the lines come together.
Right.
We're all participating in the same. At one point, it was pretty much the same.
Right.
Some are going down, and they're going down fast at an angle. And some are going up, and they're going up fast at an angle. The thing that makes the K not so much a K is when you look at the letter K, the two angle lines look kind of even, right? No, that's not the same when it talks about going up, so that going up is a lot higher up on the line, so, but if you understand that, yes, we're participating in the economy. Yes, we're going to work. The same things that we were doing pre-COVID. If you make a plan based on what it was like in 1985, 95, 2005, or even 2025, your plan is already obsolete.
Whoa.
That's the scary part.
That's true.
Right? Your plan's already obsolete. So what you have to do to be future ready is you have to be resilient and agile. We have no idea how many jobs are going to be impacted, how many new jobs are going to be created. So if you're not looking to the future and you just so happen to go to school to be an actuarial expert or an administrative data processing that was, doing certain things a certain way, a lot of that's been automated. You have to remove emotion from finances to make a financial plan.
Welcome to the Wisdom Bank podcast studio. I'm your host today, Mr. Innocent. I'm visiting today with Ms. D. Ms. D, thank you so much for taking our time.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Ms. D is a serial entrepreneur with over 30 years of experience in recovery and restoration and resilience in business. She has owned businesses of her own and worked with clients in over 4 continents. Congratulations on that, Ms. D.
Thank you.
She also undertakes and help families secure their finances, and she's also very pushful in getting families to get more into entrepreneurship, which we really needed in this time around.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much for all that which you are doing. We'll be touching a very sensitive topic. Building financial security when it comes to uncertain time. Tariff has made businesses not to really understand which directions they're going to take, what decisions they're going to make, and that is also affecting families as well. Mm-hmm. So welcome to the show, and thank you so much for taking our time.
Glad to be here.
Awesome. The first question I have for you is, when you hear the word building financial security, if you want to define that term to a layman, how can you put that into context when it comes to AI?
Financial security is a very, very difficult thing to describe because security to each one of us is a little bit individual.
Perfect.
But in the world of AI, you want to make sure that you have enough to withstand the uncertain. And so it's enough to keep your lights on. It's enough to, if I got to go buy a generator in case the lights go out, So when you start talking about financial security, the definitions that we used to have was 2 cars in the garage and so much in your checking account and your house halfway paid for, and you had your kids' college. Those things are a little bit elusive now, and with a lot of the changes that have happened, may not be as readily available.
So when you mention the fact that what we knew at first, as you mentioned, having a good house, the house is paid off, having funds for kids, when you say they are elusive, what do you mean by that? Can you go a little bit more deeper?
Oh, absolutely. Many of the impacts of AI has hit individuals who were previously income secure. They were in middle management, college educated, or some sort of executive at a large company and things of that nature.
Yes.
AI has changed the way businesses are operating and thinking about operating. And the bigger the businesses are, in my humble opinion, the bigger the businesses are, the more they would rather automate and get rid of the people than support the people to grow and do more with the organizational changes that happen. So typically, middle America, those of us who have been gainfully employed and things of that nature, we're starting to see shifts. We're starting to see whole sectors that were very vibrant before, that you may even went and got a specialized education in, that are now automated by a machine.
Now, when you mention shift, can you be more specific? Is it been like, are you at a shift? Like, let me put it this way: the shift to the right, to the left, or to the center. Can you be more specific on when it comes to finances and the impact it has on family? Yes.
Well, it's layers of uncertainty. Typically, if we have a tornado, for example, right. We know the tornado came through and this and that and the other thing. In business, I use a pencil factory as an example. If you made pencils before, right. You knew when you walked in your job that this is a machine that I work on, and I'm either doing wood or the eraser or the little metal band that goes around the top, or I'm hot stamping something. You understood the business and the business model. Now, the business model itself has changed. Now, the job that you may work in or the business that you may have, there is a level of change that is happening, that it's not going back to, well, let's use some total quality management to see how we can be more efficient or something like that. The shift is, how can we use technology to do more of what humans were doing? The initial, we talked 3 years ago now.
Right.
When we talked about it then, the whole thing was, don't be afraid of it. It's just going to help you do your job better. Well, yeah, if your job was going to stay around, so in the technology field, you innovated yourself right into the disruption. So now once AI has been created, and a lot of things that some industries do that we are going to talk about as we go further,
yes.
A lot of things that those industries do, now what you created can do what you did better and faster. And so when we talk about, it is artificial because a machine is doing it and a human had to teach it what to do.
Right.
Right. So in some cases, it is an assemblage of information. So if I had to do a lot of data processing before, the machines now can take voluminous amounts of data and within seconds come up with something that used to take us days, weeks, or months to do.
Let me present to you some statistics here that I did. It's very fascinating, and we need to shed more light on this because we need to embrace AI. It's part of our life right now, and if by then we're ignoring, I think we're making a very big mistake. These statistics, I read them from NFCC. Okay. It said, amid widespread concern about the economic landscape, the survey found that about half of U.S. adults have less when it comes to their savings. 53% they have way less in their bank account. Similar of that portion, they feel that should in case of anything, they cannot withstand. 43 says that in case of anything, they cannot be able to provide a paycheck for the next 2 months. Now, is AI a factoring? Like, is it AI that has really pushed families to get to that point where it's hard for us to balance our finances, especially those working in white collar jobs?
That's an excellent question. Is it all AI's fault? No. We came out of a pandemic. We've got political, economic disruption. Like you mentioned, the tariffs, the new administrations coming in, weather patterns have changed. So we've got a perfect storm of all of the things together happening at one time that typically maybe one or two of them would happen,
Mhm.
but all of them happening at one time, and then we're trying to recover from that. And I will speak for this country.
Yes.
We are not as resilient as we are consumering. So other nations who have had to rebuild or had to build something from scratch or didn't always have reliable water, power, roadways, free economic systems and things of that nature, we've always had that in the United States to some extent. So it is amazing how much we take for granted. The old school thought pattern was, I'm going to work at, let me just say General Motors, because that's big in the area where we're recruiting
Right.
from. I'm going to work at General Motors. I'm going to get vested. I'm going to have my pension. We're going to retire. Well, that works out fine until they lay off a third of the workforce because sales are down or want to increase profits or something like that. Same thing if you were a computer programmer. That used to be the thing to get into. Now they're taking the biggest hit. So again, these are not just entry-level jobs that are difficult to get in, or it's not a matter of that we don't have enough technology or enough technologists or educated people in that manner. The whole methodology of doing business has changed. So, and it's cyclical. Businesses go up and down. They're never always going straight up. And right now we're in what's called a K economy.
The K economy.
Mm-hmm.
Can you define that?
Absolutely.
I've been listening that, and I was following I think there's an upcoming meeting for the Fed, and the K economy keep coming up. As an entrepreneur, I need a clean definition.
You need a clean. Okay,
Yes.
It's really simple. If you look at the letter K,
Right.
the baseline is the economy. Some people are winning, and some people are losing, and it's the same letter. It's the same economic situation, and some people are doing really good with it, and some people that started off, because K has that point to it where the letters, the lines come together.
Right.
We're all participating in the same. At one point, it was pretty much the same.
Right.
But some are going down, and they're going down fast at an angle, and some are going up, and they're going up fast at an angle. The thing that makes the K not so much a K is when you look at the letter K, the two angle lines look kind of even,
Similar.
right? No, that's not the same when it talks about going up, so that going up is a lot higher up on the line, So, but if you understand now, yes, we're participating in the economy. Yes, we're going to work. We were doing the same things that we were doing pre-COVID, right? We haven't bought new cars. We didn't, splurge on this, that, or the other thing. But that same activity is not going as far as it used to. It's not keeping up in certain sectors, in certain industries, in certain geographies, right? So some of it is location based. Some of it is, what's going on in the sector that you're in. And then some of it is we are not adapting or adjusting to the change rapidly enough. And what AI has done, it has changed so much, so fast, that if you are not comfortable with change, you can stick your head in the ground and kind of act like it's not here or fuss about it. You remember when the internet came out?
Right.
It was everything from the devil to, the savior of mankind and this and that and the other thing. It was going to be spying on everybody. To some extent, some of that may be true. There's conspiracy theorists out here, and some of the theories are not as we see now. They're not so off. But AI is the same thing. We cannot ignore it now because it's here, and you cannot unring the bell.
Wow. Now, you have over 30 years as an entrepreneur. Families that depends on 8 to 5, irrespective, be it in the IT world or in warehouse or whatever. I want to ask you, can entrepreneurship counter AI to ensure that family can secure their finances?
Absolutely. And this is the silver lining in AI.
it has democratized information and access. So historically, when we say democratize, what does that mean?
Yes.
That means everybody can get at it equally. If you can get to a library, you can get on ChatGPT or, Gemini or Anthropic or whatever. It leveled the playing field with certain activities. So now you would never have a 17-year-old creating an app out of his own imagination in the, corner of his bedroom in his parents' house, right? And one of the big companies bought it from that child, 17 years old, bought it from him for $650 million. You would not have people who created things. There's all kinds of stories. They call them, some of them are unicorns and some of them are just good things that people, different companies that want the technology and the usage of the technology. So when AI was released, it was released open source.
Yes.
And the capitalist world said, if everybody has access to it, how am I supposed to make money on it? Right? Because capitalism operates on scarcity, not equality. Okay.
I was to ask you that because I know that ChatGPT till today, I think you have maybe a certain time frame where you can have free usage. When you start to prompt it to more complex questions, it now begins to require you to pay the plus so that you can now be able now to.
So you bring up an interesting theory about how it works. But in essence, because AI, if you look at it as an assemblage of information rather than a creator of information, if you're asking AI something that you are unfamiliar with, you still have to learn it first, right? So that I can go and put a prompt in AI about something that I know nothing about, and it's going to give me an answer based on how I asked it. But if I ask AI something from a point of understanding, it'll give me an entirely different answer with the free program.
I want you to differentiate between the two, okay? Because you've hit a nail on two things here. Asking AI for just asking sake, and then asking AI with understanding of what you really want. How do the two differ?
Okay, one is using AI as Google. You just throw it in there, you're asking a question, what's the best route to get from Kansas City to Kentucky, right?
Right.
An informed prompt would be, what is the most gas efficient way, the fastest way? What stops should I make along the way? Because you understand the nature of travel. How much is the gas and this and that and the other thing. So it's a deeper questioning. It's a deeper assemblage of information. But more importantly, it's only a tool. You can have the best microphone setup and cameras and everything else, and it can still turn out and look very amateurish. Whereas somebody who has studied photography and understands lighting and understands that there's stuff behind these walls to make things bounce correctly or whatever, you have a totally different outlook than somebody with an iPhone doing it in their back bedroom, right? So it's
right.
the skill of the user. So it still requires what we call systems thinking and design thinking and just thinking, period. Not just looking for a quick answer. You can stay with Google if you want to. Google is very good at doing some of the same things that people use AI for. It's not that the Google was never the problem, or Google type of thing was never the problem. You ask a question. But when you give something a prompt, you have to tell it what type of response you want, who it is asking as. So you always have to define, well, you don't have to, but based on the quality of answer you want, what you're going to use that answer for, you have to define what role the AI is playing.
Now, I want us to take it very close. Define that role which you want AI to play when it comes to finance, so as to secure your spot in this uncertain time.
You can be as creative as you want about the knowledge level that you want to receive. So, for example, I am talking to you as if you are Warren Buffett. Help me to understand and break it down to me as a fifth grader. If you don't understand finance or the terms or whatever, break it down to me like a fifth grader to tell me what actionable items I can take to go from $50,000 a year in a 4-person household in this zip code to being more comfortable and having my income secure. Ask me any questions you need to give me a better answer.
Right.
Most of the time we just ask the question. We don't ask it to challenge us. We don't ask it to be the devil's advocate. We can use AI to help us look at our spending habits. There's a lot of tools out there right now that are AI based that will go through your bank statements and charge card statements and that sort of thing. Or you can do a just simple questionnaire if you don't want to put your information in there. And it'll say, well, you know what? You spend $2,000 a year at Starbucks. And most of us are like flabbergasted that I'm spending that much on Starbucks. Women, it is really hard on us for some of the things that we like to do. I stopped getting my nails done. As beautiful as I love the French manicure with the little diamond in it and this and that. I mean, that is beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
Right.
But the place that I go to was $107 every 2 weeks.
$107.
$107. Now that's the place I go to. Now I could go to another place that would get it down to probably 65 or 70, but it didn't have the ambiance that I felt I needed. Right. But $107 every 2 weeks times 26 weeks. Do the math.
Whoa. That's huge.
Okay. That's just my nails.
Just one aspect.
That's just one aspect. Then I'm 61 and I'm going to use myself as an example because I can talk best about myself.
Right.
But when I wanted to invest in growing my business and I was a few dollars short over here, or I needed to invest in another piece of equipment or whatever, I look at what can I do without, or had AI help me? What are some of the things that I can do without as a 61-year-old Black woman living in Lee Summit? These are my non-negotiables. This is what I can't do without, and this is what I'm willing to do.
What are some of those apps that if someone is watching this, he can check out that can help? Because you mentioned a very, very important fact here. Our spending habit have a very, very big role to bring us down when it comes to managing our finances. And AI is helping you as a guide to manage your spending. What are some of those apps that someone can check out?
So for the basic things that you need, most larger banks or even the digital banks, if you scroll down, they have apps in the banking thing, so you don't have to move your information around.
Right.
That's probably a little bit more secure. There's mobile apps as well too to help you about your attitude towards money. Right. Some of us have addictions. If it's, overspending is an addiction. Most men will say my wife's go-to get over thing is shopping. Very few women that I know don't like to shop. Men shop too, but when you look at the things that you've got, and before you do the app though, to help you find the right AI, I would just work with one of the basic AIs that you have. And ask it based on my spending habits. I want you to go through and do an assessment of me. Ask me the questions that you need to ask to help understand my lifestyle so you can help me figure out what the best app is. And then I'm always into cost effectiveness. I want free, quality, cost effective. If I got to pay for it, let me know where I got to pay for it. And it'll create a table for you and say which ones are working. And then you can take that information and you say, which one has the most complaints? Which one is not secure? How old are they? And it goes through all of that faster. Not that you cannot do it yourself. You can actually do that same exercise yourself.
Right.
But because we are in the immediate information, we call it the popcorn generation. Different ones say we have the attention span now of a small gnat. AI has made that worse. I get upset with my AI now if I got to wait more than 4 seconds for the answer. It's like, okay, come on already. And it's doing a complex spreadsheet.
Right.
Whereas before it took that long for the program to load. Well, now, in some of those things, that's not good. That's not good because it's changing how we compute and how we, our expectations of some of the information that we use. So that can spill over in other areas of life, especially for our younger users.
Wow. Financial insecurity has caused a lot of mental health.
Absolutely.
And now, if automating some of our spending habit using AI, how can that help us to be more secure in the way we spend our money in our day-to-day activity?
Again, a lot of this is mental. We have the cards. My grandsons were with me a few days ago, and they wanted something, and I'm like, oh my goodness, you know how much that is? And he was like, just swipe your card. Like the card has some sort of magical whatever, right? And then there's other times where you swipe the card and you're sitting there waiting for that bing to make sure that it went through.
Right.
Well, that's not good. That's your sign number one that you don't know enough about paying attention to your finances. If you're guessing how much money you got, or you got to go and look to see what's in there, you are not stewarding your dollars. And because we don't talk about finance, like I said, I'm 61. The generation where I came up with we didn't discuss finances with my parents. That's none of your business. Turn off those lights. You know how much my electric bill is? Actually, I don't. But there were things that we were told to do. And so now we are starting younger with credit. We are starting younger with, I got to work for this. This may not be here always. So what is my resilience and contingency plan? So one of the things that we have to have, because of the way the society is so uncertain, financially, economically, geopolitically, weather-wise, and everything else, you got to have a get-back bucket, right? That's where's the get-back bucket, And now, because of digital things and everything else, if our internet went down and our communication systems went down, your charge cards won't work. You can't pump gas. There's all kinds of things you can't do.
Right.
So now your get back bucket needs to actually have a literal bucket with it where you have so much cash available that you can go touch and hide or something somewhere just in case the systems go down for a day or two.
Now, you mentioned a very, very important point, which when it comes to financial security, we tend to play a blind eye on it. And I want you to zoom in on that. You mentioned this Git bucket, this little bucket that we need to keep aside, right? Our generation, everything is in the card. We need to swipe without really knowing what it is. How is this contingency funds? How important is it for us to cultivate that habit when it comes to financial security? Yes.
And in my estimation, based on everything that's going on right now, it is just as critical as making the money, period. If the average consumer, the average American right now is 2 paychecks away from homelessness.
What?
It has gotten, and a lot of it is geography located. Some of the research that we've done, and we live in a good area to be able to. Just want to grab something.
I would love to break that data down.
Okay, so
average American is 2 paychecks away from homelessness. Break that data down, Ms. D.
So if your rent, is $1,500, let's say $1,500 a month for easy math for me.
Yes.
$1,500 a month, right? That is $6,000 of income that you're supposed to bring in to make sure that everything balances out. Okay, so your paycheck every other week is $3,000, right?
That's right.
So if you miss the first check, do I eat? Do I keep the lights on? Do I make the car payment? Do I do gas and groceries? All the other stuff goes away. If you don't have any money, all the other stuff has to go away. You're going to start to barter for something.
Yes.
Right? So if you don't have a 2-month emergency fund, now, that emergency fund is only 2 months.
2 months.
Okay? So the first month, they're not going to reduce your rent because you lost your job. And then it depends on how you lost your job too. The people at Facebook, thousands of them one day got an email from some elusive group within Facebook saying, we're investing in AI, therefore your services are no longer needed. Now, if you do the ripple effect of that, when you throw a pebble in some water, you see those rings that keep happening?
Right.
Well, if I lived in that town and we were all going to that same office and thousands of us got laid off at the same time, what does that do to the restaurants, to the automobile industry, to the daycare industry? What does that do to everything else? Because now I don't have that disposable income for things that I used to have. And so those are the economics that we actually need to listen to, not to scare ourselves, but to prepare ourselves. And so we've gotten so lazy on the preparation side because things just kind of keep going on. And most of us, a lot of us, aren't even aware of half the things that are going on because we don't pay attention to it because it's difficult. It's a hard conversation to have. Men especially have a hard time talking about their finances. One of my biggest category group of clients are wealthier, non-Black individuals who don't mind talking to me about what they don't have because they don't think I have nothing.
Right.
Right. But they're not going to go to the country club and talk about that. They're not going to go over here and talk about that. Or your identity is tied into what you do for a living. Well, what if that whole position got eliminated and they don't need you anymore?
That is scary.
Who are you?
You lost everything. Now, Ms. D, I want you to break down a very, very important point here. You mentioned that how can we prepare first to secure the future for ourselves and for our kids when it comes to financial security? And the second part is, while preparing, what are the steps? Because you can be preparing something, but you are not taking the appropriate steps. Blend these two together when it comes to AI and our finances. How can we do that?
The first thing, and thank you for having this program. The first thing is to be aware of where things are headed. If you make a plan based on what it was like in 1985, 95, 2005, even 2025, your plan is already obsolete.
Whoa.
That's the scary part.
That's true.
Right? Your plan's already obsolete. So what you have to do to be future ready is you have to be resilient and agile. We have no idea how many jobs are going to be impacted, how many new jobs are going to be created. So if you're not looking to the future and you just so happen to go to school to be an actuarial expert or an administrative data processing that was, doing certain things a certain way, a lot of that's been automated. It's been absolutely automated. And so I was in Atlanta a couple of years ago and was participating with the group there that was trying to get very, very low income, uneducated individuals into like a NASA type of situation. And logically, very idealistic. It was very wonderful, but it was a sprinkling to say big corporate America did something for the little guys. So don't say anything to me when we have to lay off all these middle people. Right.
Right.
And that's exactly what happened. So when you look at some of these big cities that have office buildings and things of that nature, not only did they have to go through COVID, then we went to the work from home, but now AI automation, I don't need as many butts and seats as I did before. So if mom and dad worked for the places that had the butts and seats, and all of a sudden in a very short period of time, without a lot of notice, that's gone. You don't have time to re-educate yourself. You don't have time, so time is sometimes not your friend. So the first thing we have to do, to your question, we got to take an assessment of our family unit and what we have, what we don't have, how can we work together, what's going on in your industry, what's going on in your sector, and get on AI and tell AI, you are a short-term futurist. Help me understand. And if you work for a big company, put that company's name in there. What are the goals? What are the if you work for a publicly traded company, what are the goals? If you work for another company that you're hearing rumbles about there's going to be a layoff, there's this thing in most states. It's called the WARN notice. I forget what it stands for, but you can't just lay people off and not alert at least the government that you're laying them off. So they put these notices out that says, oh, Facebook, I'm getting ready to lay off 29,000 people and this and that and the other thing. And is it permanent or temporary or whatever? You can ask AI to check and see if your company has had or has a WARN notice out, right?
Wow.
And so that is the data that AI can assemble information. Because remember, it's artificial. It doesn't have feelings.
Right.
And because it doesn't have feelings, that makes it an exceptional partner to help you with your finances. It's not emotionally attached to, well, we've always lived this way. We've always lived in New York City. We've always lived, in nice homes that were 10,000 square feet and 4-car garages, We've always driven luxury vehicles. We've always had 6 weeks vacation where we've always done that. AI won't let you get away with that when it comes to creating a strategy and helping you to figure out those things. So you have to remove emotion from finances to make a financial plan.
I love the angle from which you are really taking this. Basically, history have zero impact at this point if you want to move forward.
You know what? I would agree, but then I would absolutely disagree.
Yes.
We don't have a snapshot of history that looks like what it looks like now. Because remember when I said AI has democratized things?
Yes.
The old order said that you had to do this and do that and go up the corporate ladder and this and that and the other thing. Now, if you have a laptop and you're thinking about something and you can figure out how to create it, you can do the same thing that the big companies do. Right? So the way you make your money can change. You have an opportunity now to say, you know what? I've always wondered why we do it this way instead of that way. I think I want to make an app or I want to do a whatever to help do that. It can help you with the business plan. There's all kinds of things that we used to pay for and we don't have to pay for anymore.
Can you give an example? What are the things that we can't pay for anymore, but still we'll still get a very good result?
And I'm going to pick on this one industry because it's been the most impacted for a certain sector of people. The advertising and marketing industry. We used to, certain things, the Super Bowl commercial, you had to use a big ad agency and, it was at one point in time, the math was $1 million every 15 seconds to produce a commercial for X, Y, and Z. Well, that's not the case anymore.
It's gone.
It's gone. Now, if you don't have the basic skills that a Marcom or a marketing and communication expert would have, your stuff will still look homemade. But if you have those skills and can use AI, you can produce some things that it's like, man, is that AI or is that real? That's where even like some of the fraud stuff comes in, fraud detection. Some of the stuff that we're paying for or whatever, banks can look at now, immediately now, and cross-reference this, that, and the other thing. So they're using a lot of that for fraud detection. One of my former relationships in an affiliate group that I was working with, they had an insurance app that was tied into the weather. And so I guess a lot of people say, I have hail damage on my car, I need it painted, I lived in Kansas City, Missouri, and this and that and the other thing. Well, now this app wants to get down to what time did you notice, did you park your car here during what periods of time and where exactly was the vehicle? And it can take the weather records and say, nope, that storm didn't go that far to that one and everything else. So we're going to deny that claim because it did not hail over there. The hail didn't start, so now instead of going through voluminous amounts of data and this and that and the other thing, boom, it's a 2-second situation.
Let me bring you back to, you mentioned earlier that we are 2 paycheck of being homeless. You mentioned that statistics. I want to ask, what is the role of corporate? As you just mentioned, the fact that companies are now using AI to really limit the maneuvers, right? That families can use, that they kind of like, I would say, they are using AI to block their blind spot, right?
So
How? Yes,
you ask a great question about what are the rules.
right.
They're still working on them. There's so many things that, intellectual property is a new area. Whose music is it? If you create some music with AI, which you're able to do now, and some of it's pretty good and you wouldn't even know it's AI.
Yeah.
Right? Whose music is that? Because the AI created it, so do they get, there's no rules on how much you can use AI for. There's some suggestions on from a corporate management standpoint. 2 years ago, the legal industry said, nope, we're not going to use AI. We're still going to. Now, shoot. AI is doing a lot. As far as some of the rules that tell a corporation what it can and can't do with AI, that is still evolving. Different countries are using various and sundered mechanisms to try to get that figured out, but how do you rein in capitalism? So do I lay the people off to get the shareholders more money, or do I lay the people off so I can spend more on AI so I can lay more people off? I'm not going to stand up here if I'm Jamie Dimon and say, well, hey, I think I can eliminate a third of our staff if I just did this, that, and the other thing. Give me 20 of your best whatever to create this, and I can get rid of 1,000 people. And then I'm going to lay off the 20 that made it. So you can kind of go back over the last year and a half, and see that is exactly what has happened. You can ask AI, using Meta's example, or using Amazon's example, or using Anthropic's example of how they've dealt with their HR. What is the best jobs for me to have? Or how do I create income? Or I work for this company. How do I find income resilience? And it'll give you some answers. And some of those answers are about changing your attitude about AI. Instead of waiting for them to tell you how AI is going to impact you, get in the system and become an AI orchestrator. You can't automate something that you don't understand the process. Right? So it's garbage in, garbage out. So even if you automate a process, perfect point. The Elon Musk guy went in and did the Doge thing and started automating stuff and this and that and the other thing. Well, I forgot to get the code to this, that, or the other, so now the whole system doesn't work. Oh, we laid those people off. Call them back. You have a lot of that stuff going. So you have a lot of people that are trying it but aren't getting the return on investment that they wanted because they didn't do it right, because somebody didn't have enough understanding of what it was that they were trying to do. So in my business right now, there's a lot of room in the marketplace for helping people to create a process that doesn't have a lot of redundancy in it, or you miss this whole section in this process, right? And so you still got to go back to the basics. So I say the best thing you can do now is be a thinker. Question everything. AI changed the way we educate ourselves. We used to be told, here's the paragraph, you read the paragraph, the answer's in the paragraph. AI is just the opposite. It is, what is the question? And let's find variations of an answer for scenarios.
Hello, viewers. I'm visiting today with Ms. D, and we're really breaking down building financial security in uncertain times, and we're focusing on AI. Ms. D, we are making a very, very important point. In this generation, be a thinker and question things. Can you expatiate on that point?
Absolutely. When I'm talking to my young folks, my college graduates, my high school graduates, Gen Z.
Right.
Well, they naturally question everything for two reasons. One, they saw their parents work like crazy and now they got laid off. They saw older relatives go into these categories and paid a lot of money for their education, and now they can't make ends meet. There's a fundamental distrust of big corporations with our young people, right? So thinking for them is, give me a parallel system. I don't want to do what you did because it's not working for you. It's not working for the planet. And whole groups of us don't have access to it. So how do we change this thing over here that's not working for us? That's the Gen Z response. If I'm a middle manager, 50s, 60s, still got some work in me, still don't have all the savings that I need together, and I'm worried about the generation behind me and the generation in front of me, now I'm worried about I got intergenerational issues. So now I can't live in my parents' basement until I figure this out. My parents may be ill or may need me to help them, and then I'm still trying to help the young ones and the grandbabies. So that sandwich generation has a lot more pressure on it. So the thinking that you have to do is more design thinking about not only yourself and your well-being, that starts with your own health, your mental health, your family unit, keeping peace somewhere. Where is that circle that we can get to where we can figure this out together? How do we make our resources stretch? You're having the hardest conversation. And if you are older, 65 and up, and you thought you had enough and something happened, either the pension that your company was supposed to have is no longer available to you, or the value of that pension was supposed to be X and now it's here, or a hurricane came through and just took everything out, and now you had to give your savings to your kids so they could do whatever, and now you're actually worried about your lifespan and how you're going to live out the rest of your life. You got to think. So the beautiful part, though, is what I mentioned about the democratization that AI brings. You cannot not learn it if you need to be resilient. Now, if you just so happen to have Elon Musk type of money and you can lose $1 billion a week and it really won't hurt you, keep doing what you're doing, boo-boo. But if that is not your case, and if you are a person of color, this is one time in our history that they cannot give us access.
Why do you say so?
Oh my goodness. So I am not a college educated individual. So there were certain jobs. This is why I've never had a job. Always worked for myself. There are certain jobs that I never qualified for, even though I read all the books that they put out on it, and it could probably explain it a little bit better than the person that actually had the job. Right. AI doesn't care about my background.
It spells it out to you.
It spells it out, and they'll teach it to me like I learned. And because our educational system in this country is fragmented, it was designed to teach you to go work for corporate America. It was designed to teach you to be a factory worker. Here's the bell. Here's the chairs. The chairs are all lined up. Everybody goes together. Here's the bell curve that everybody's graded on. So it missed a lot of intelligence trying to shoehorn us into one thing. And so because we were shoehorned into certain things, we never had the ability to think, question. We had to memorize the answer. Now, there's certain things that are factual and are basics of everything. Math don't change. Geometry don't change.
Right.
That stuff doesn't change. That's still real. But you cannot make a living just understanding math and knowing how to read. You can create something now with technology that will give you the revenue that you need, and you can do it so much quicker. One of my clients now, he just totally impresses me with how he keeps advancing things. He started off, did all the right things, got the credit that he needed, invested in his business, hired the best ad agency, this, that, and the other thing. And so I was helping him with his financial planning.
Right.
And I'm like, you paid the ad agency what? For what? You paid $8,000 for that website? I could have did the website for you or showed you how to do it for $80.
Claude, right?
Mm-hmm.
That just got released, last month or 2 months or so? They can produce a website with a card payment on it within just a click. So when I saw that news, I was asking, developers are gone.
Well, they are, but here's the caveat. Developers who understand digital wayfinding, trust building, there's only so many, the ones that are out here now that build it, it'll get you what we call MVP, a minimal viable product.
Right.
Okay, it'll get you that really quick. And then, so in the technology and the AI world, you get your MVP out there really fast.
Right.
So if you need something for your business, you can get something decent out there really fast and then let your revenue pay for your upgrade. Right? We get stuck in that basic one that people look at me like, you can tell what program made it. So there's a level that you can't get rid of. So ad agencies have changed. They're not gone altogether, but they have changed.
Now, you mentioned at the top of the show about change is inevitable. Right now, we need to embrace AI because it's not going anywhere.
It's not going away.
It's just gonna get more wider and more wider. Now, families today, in this currently as we're talking right now, one of my mentors says something that if you find yourself in a hole, stop digging.
Stop digging. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what can families actually do to secure a perfect pathway? Not a perfect pathway, but a good pathway with their ability to embrace AI.
You gotta get the intelligence about it first. You can't make a plan about something that you don't know anything about. So that's like somebody saying, okay, you can take that airplane anywhere you want to go, make a plan and let us know how that goes. Well, you can plan a destination. I don't know where's the keys to the plane? Where's the brakes? You know what I mean?
Right, right.
So it gets down to the minutia that it's garbage in, garbage out. If you don't have a plan for your life anyway, some of us are more spiritual than others, but if you were born, you ate, slept, took care of yourself, made it at some point in time, had some more y'all ate, slept, made it again, that ain't a plan. That's nature. That's going to happen. But what makes us different from animals is that we can say, yeah, I want to do all of that stuff, but my purpose is grander than that. My purpose is I want to help the motherland. I want to help people who are born with physical disabilities. I want to impact my community by doing X, Y, and Z. Or I want to, while I'm doing here, I want to help young ladies feel better about themselves. That's a plan. That's a goal worth having a plan for. And then some of us are just plain old capitalists. I want to be a millionaire. Well, and that million doesn't get you so far. In certain areas, again, geographically,
Right.
if I'm living in certain parts of the South and I have $1 million, I'm well off. Here in this area, I can tell you exactly, let's see, in the West Coast, a family of four needs an income of over $400,000. That's just your income. Okay. And if you're living around here, you can get away with, Ohio, you need $108,000. So you see why certain people move to certain different areas and everything else. And then when you start going to New York and everything else like that, it's ridiculous. That's why they're talking about people have to do a tactical move. Am I in the right place for the lifestyle that I want to have? So I may look, like right now I'm looking at different locations and everything else. Like I said, I'm 61, so retirement is about 20 years away. Okay.
That's a long time.
That's a long time.
But theoretically, it's a long time. But with AI, it's just a step away here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It goes, and the older you get, it seems like faster it goes. But you got to have all of your tactical moves together. So you've got your, there was some cartoons that home is where your rump rest, Well, if that was an accident and that's where you ended up or whatever, reassess all of that. Be curious. Ask the questions. Curiosity encourages thinking, right? So when you start saying, well, shoot, okay, right now we're seated in Grandview, Missouri. Okay, well, Is there another part of Missouri that gives me all of the things that my family needs, but more access to X, Y, and Z, or more ability to have income security, or more ability to be able to help the generation that's behind me and take care of the generation that's ahead of me? Do I need to start looking at intergenerational family compounds, for example? Do I need to live somewhere where I can put an ADU on the house because I got an acre behind mine? My house is paid for. I can go put an ADU up, an accessory dwelling unit, put another house on the property and extend the driveway or whatever. And now I got grandmas on each side and the kids can go back there. We all have our own house, but we're on the same
block.
Yeah. Now how much do we need to live?
Now, I want to ask you a very, very important question in this light that you just mentioned, in terms of how much do we need to have to live. We've been talking all of this. We haven't factored out some key aspects in there: taxes, inflation. Because you mentioned the fact that you have that contingency plan that we talked earlier on, and a tornado just came. It has taken everything. We haven't put in the big man, the big elephant in the building: taxes and inflation. When it comes to financial security, how should we pay close attention to these two key factors? Taxes.
So again, it's the certainty of uncertainty, right? So when you want to build a financial plan, you try to build it on a rock, not on sand. Well, if the treasury bill goes up or down or whatever, or the US dollar goes up or down or whatever, becomes useless and people don't buy this, that, and the other thing, that ain't your sand, but that's not your rock, but I built it on that. So when you have the prudent person sees danger ahead, takes refuge, while the simple person says, well, I'm just going to hope I get through it. So if you're looking ahead, if you're reading, if you're listening, if you're naturally curious about things, you can look at the things that you say you have that you think is rock-like, but now because of AI are more sand-like.
Differentiate that in terms of the rock-like and the sand-like. Zoom in and really shed more light in that.
Okay, so things change and shift. It used to be the EV vehicles. They thought, okay, well, gasoline is going to go away altogether and we're going to all have electric vehicles and this country will be 100% EV by 2030.
Right.
We all saw those things and it was like, man, and Elon Musk comes along and all these other car dealers and everything come along and they try to make these electric vehicles and things of that nature. Wow. It was all the rage. Just do a quick Google search and what happened to the pricing of a Tesla.
That's true.
Okay, so if you went and bought all kinds of stock in electric vehicles and this and that, right now they're kind of flat.
Right, they're flat. Yes.
If you work for the General Motors plant that was doing the hybrid big truck, that thing is kind of on hold right now.
Yes.
Right? Now, yes, that did happen. There's a couple of things that when you think and you get curious and everything, you start talking about, well, what's the battery life of the doggone thing? And where are we going to get the power from for this stuff? And what other industries can be created if it does blow up or does go down or whatever? And so we started just pontificating on different things and scenario planning. Now you can't really do a solid resilience plan and say, here's X, Y, and Z of every exact thing that we're going to do. You need a scenario plan, right? So I've got some clients that are in the value chain of the EV industry. And I'm like, okay, well, you better be able to pivot fast. What can I pivot to? If they don't make EVs, well, what happens to that doggone EV battery at the end of its life?
That's another.
Right? So where are the opportunities there? Well, you got some Tesla batteries that are blowing up in the junkyard after they got tore up. So when you start looking at, well, why did that happen? Shipping different pieces and parts of an electric battery is actually hazardous materials.
Right.
Well, where's that going when it's, where's the junkyard for EV batteries? So now you can start thinking about different things that we don't have an answer to, but this whole industry is here. This whole industry is here. What happens if the power goes down for all of these data centers, if there's not enough power and this and that and the other thing? Okay, well, if AI does have an open source component and I do need it, can I figure out a way to run my own computers to do what AI says so that I can keep working regardless of what happens to the big systems? We're so used to plugging into things. So what you're going to see happen, and this is a whole nother thing that we have. What's getting ready to happen? The last shall be first and the first shall be last. So if you start building, your kids are going to be learning with AI as part of the way they learn, which is why they can operate your cell phone better than you can, right? So because they learned with the latest and the greatest, they're going to advance faster. There's reasons why there's a concerted effort to take over parts of Africa right now, in addition to all of its natural resources and everything else. Well, now that parts of Africa have enough resources of their own that I don't need outside influences and this and that and the other thing, well, we got to cut the fiber optic cord that goes around Africa over there, because we can't have them getting ahead of us. Right?
Wow.
Because they're going to start with the best. Right? So they're going to start being energy efficient. They're going to start by thinking in possibilities and building together as families from scratch. So I'm very excited. As bad as some of the things are, the fraud with AI, the things that AI can create are pretty doggone dangerous. Right now, you can look at something and there was a whole character that during the elections, the Republican Party created a character that wasn't even it was a real man, but they made his mouth do things. They took pieces of what he said and made it be a whole different sentence. You can do that now.
Yeah.
You can't even believe everything you see anymore, which is weird. But so those sort of things we're going to need some guardrails on. Those sort of things are coming. Understanding intellectual property. If you wanted to go into that, keeping track of that. How do you protect yourself on something that you do have protected in this age? So, oh my goodness, lots of opportunities are going to be created. But the fundamental things that we have to do for our families and our families' income security, we have to look at things that can't necessarily be automated. Everybody can't be in AI.
I was going to, as we are wrapping this up, I was going to bring that last point that you just mentioned here. When it comes to family and wealth building, right? What are those areas which you believe or which we can hang on to, which will avoid the raft of AI?
You're going to have multiple sectors of income, not just multiple streams, but multiple sectors.
Differentiate the two. What's the difference between a sector and a stream when it comes to income?
So a sector is trades. A sector is computer coding, graphic design. Those are different sectors, right?
Yes.
And so what was it? The other part when you asked for the difference between the sector and
sector
and
streams.
And the income stream is I sell Mary Kay. I got a job. I also sell cookies on the side. Those are streams, but they're not necessarily attached to the sector. So certain sectors are in high jeopardy, or there's a lot of need for resilience. But there's also a lot of opportunity. So when we start looking at the trades, it's going to be very hard for somebody to create some AI that'll go out to somebody's house and fix a water leak, or actually build something from scratch. You have some things that they're doing 3D printed housing and things of that nature, but it's not, it's not totally replacing the need for a journeyman carpenter. Some of the arts, the fine arts, you're still going to need somebody who understands that you don't put B flat and C sharp together in the same way. Somebody's got to understand something about something, right? So when you look at your family unit, what everybody's in, we used to have a lot of families that the family business was bakery.
Right.
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 Well, now that bakery may need to use a systems thinking that, oh, okay, maybe I need to start growing some wheat. Maybe I need to source my sugar differently. Maybe I need to, instead of just making treats for humans, maybe I need to also make dog treats because people spend a lot of money on doggone dogs.
Right.
Right? So now maybe I need to do something different with what it is that I have. The other thing that is very, very big is creating parallel systems so when our systems go down. So right now with agriculture, we got these big grocery stores and this and that and the other thing. Well, we saw what happened just with TSA not being able to get the people through. Can you imagine what happens to a grocery system if that system totally broke down? We used to have what we call truck farmers. You got your major city,
Right.
but all the little bitty areas around it, had the produce, and they would take their little truck and bring it in, and weekly everybody had enough and it was distributed. You didn't have big warehouses or whatever, went directly to the store, right? So there's all kinds of beautiful and wonderful opportunities. I say it just like with the pandemic. The one thing that happened during the pandemic, and you were forced to stay at home with them same people all the time, you figured out one or two things. I don't like these people and I need to get away from it. Or you all found a little bit more God and you learned something about each other, but it forced us to get back around the kitchen table again.
Wow.
Right?
This is very, very, very fascinating, this information that they are putting out here. The earlier you learn about this, the better. Because guess what? I was listening to KCUR, and a journalist asked the guy that was interviewed. He came to the show. He says, "Are the jobs of journalists at stake? Should we be also considering what AI is gonna do to us?" Because in the top of the show, you also mentioned something very important. We don't just look but on our immediate self. You look at the restaurant around us, you look at the school, if you laid off, you look at, there are so many aspects. So financial security does not just limit only within the family.
That is
It
correct.
goes way
Communities.
into the community.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very important point there. Ms. D, I really want to sincerely say thank you. Dear viewers, we have come to the end of this show. I was visiting today with Ms. D. And Ms. D, before I let you go, I want you to just say one thing. For anyone as a family listening to this show, what should they do to align with AI? And are there any books they can study to have an understanding of AI, which you can recommend?
There are every library in the Mid-Continent Library System or the Kansas City Library System or whatever, for those who are local. They have classes. They have, learn how you learn. Listen to podcasts. Play with it. Because if you buy a book on AI right now, that book has the bias of its creator. AI has the bias of its creators.
Wow.
Right? Which is why there's certain things that are very difficult to find, even with AI. So I'm an autodidact, which means I'm self-taught.
Right.
Right? AI is something really good if you have the time and the discipline to start teaching yourself. One of the things that we have at our shop, we have lunch and learns, where for free you can come and get a couple hours. We feed you, we also have a coffee and crunch where, that's later in the day, a little bit longer time on the weekends or whatever, where you can just really come and learn and see and ask your particular questions, and we help set you on an individual path. Because this isn't like the old school where here's the school, here's first grade, second grade, third grade, here's your little class schedule, and once you do this, we say you passed. This is very, very, very individual. You need an individual footprint about how you're going to let it interact in your life.
Wow. Ms. D, thank you so much. Ms. D's bio is going to be under the description of this video, and the address on how you can contact her for more. So subscribe to this channel. This is just the first episode. We have multiple episodes that are going to be coming under this topic. Ms. D, thank you so much for your time.
enjoyed being here. Thank you so much for what you do.
Thank you.